The day has arrived. We are going to start our new book talk or book club series. I have 3 books right now, and all of them are written by women who have been in the world of Playboy. And I'm very excited because Holly Madison's book is a very good book. I have not read it since it was first published, so I'm very excited to read it again and on here with everybody else. For those of you that follow me because you like my teen mom content or my other pop culture content, I will still be posting new content covering those topics as well. But I just want to move into a new book club series because I have finished the teen mom books. Maybe 1 or 2 I didn't do, but the majority of them have been done, so we're just going to keep on moving along. Viewer discretion is advised due to the contents that are in this book. Now let's begin Down the Rabbit Hole by Holly Madison. This book was published in 2015, beginning with the author's note. "Don't you miss the mansion?" squealed a round-faced, wholesome-looking 20-something girl in a high-pitched voice. I started, unsure of how to answer her politely. "No?" I said, offering a half-hearted smile. Here I was, an independent, successful woman, making millions of dollars a year, all on my own, headlining a hit show on the Las Vegas Strip, co-producing and starring in my own television show, and this woman was asking me if I missed the mansion. Clearly, the public perception of the life I shared with Hugh Hefner at the Playboy Mansion was a far, far cry from the actual reality I experienced. This question wasn't really that uncommon. Fans would regularly ask me about my time living what they assumed was this lavish, decadent life in Holmby Hills and whether I regretted my decision to leave. "Hef really fucked up when he let you go," a young fan said, shaking her head at a Las Vegas meet and greet. That was another one I was regularly on the receiving end of. "It's okay," I would always say. "I'm much better off now." I couldn't, and still can't, believe that these adult women were actually serious. While filming the reality series, The Girls Next Door, I never thought of myself or my 2 co-stars as role models or anyone to be taken seriously. I thought people were just laughing at us. I thought of us as walking advertisements. Don't try this at home, kids. I'm not stupid. I know how unsavory that whole situation was. You can read it all over my unsmiling face. Cameras often caught me rolling my eyes or looking totally uninterested, as if I didn't feel trapped enough. I built up a wall around me. I'd gotten myself into a bad situation, but I became distinctly aware that was not the impression fans walked away with. The show was the epitome of mindless reality television, which was fine. We all have our guilty pleasures that we like to unwind with at the end of the day, and that sure was one of mine. I did love that show. There is something underneath the surface that isn't okay about it, though. Around the turn of the millennium, it became fashionable for women to appear stupid, to get by solely on their looks, and to be concerned only with fame and materialism. Some of the effects of that moment in the zeitgeist still linger today. And somewhere along the way, I too bought into the ludicrous fantasy, perhaps even more so than the others. While there was a part of me that acknowledged the idiocy and superficiality that surrounded me, I fell for the glamour. Hook, line, and sinker. It took years for me to realize just how manipulated and used I had been. I could never admit that to myself at that time, because to do so would have been to acknowledge how dark and scary a situation I was in, and how very little in control I was. I'm an adult. I'm here because I chose to be. I'm here for adventure, a once-in-a-lifetime experience. I'm here as a stepping stone to something else. I routinely told myself, and perhaps the biggest disillusion, I'm here for love. Deeper and deeper, I fell down the rabbit hole. Many people may think that I'm biting the hand that fed me, and that I should be grateful for the opportunity Girls Next Door and Playboy afforded me. And while I'm grateful, It's also clear to me that most people fail to realize that there are two sides to every coin, and that even the most fantastic fairy tale has a dark underbelly. Being attached to Playboy can make people not want to have anything to do with you, even in quirky, crazy Hollywood. There were many times the hateful backlash made me wish I stayed the broke, awkward, 21-year-old waitress I had been before Hef came into my life. When I finally did find the strength to leave the mansion, I began receiving lucrative offers to reveal my version of events, but I never pursued them. I wasn't interested in writing a sensational tell-all for the sole purpose of exposing someone else's strange habits and dirty secrets. Don't worry, you'll find those things here, but in the context of something bigger. I wanted to have my own story to tell too. To this day, it astounds me the number of misconceptions that abound about my life and my experiences while at the mansion. Usually the version of the story most flattering to Hef is the one that prevails. I've seen both sugar-coated and sensationalized accounts of life at the mansion, but nothing I've ever read remotely resembles what I actually experienced. I always thought it would be classy to not kiss and tell, but after a while, you just get sick of having other people trying to tell your story for you. Hopefully, once you read my story, you will be able to understand why I made some of the choices I made, and why I also felt trapped by those choices. I hope that sharing my mistakes can prevent someone else from making similar ones, or give someone the courage to leave a bad situation. This starts off as your typical small-town girl goes to Hollywood story that we've all heard 100 times before. But it's also much more than that. It's the unauthorized, never-before-told story of the Playboy mansion and the man that holds the key. It's a behind-the-scenes account of the reality television at its most decadent and absurd. It's a cautionary tale. It's the story of betrayal and abuse, but ultimately of survival, success, and redemption. And finally, it's a real-life fairy tale with heroines, villains, odd characters, strange happenings, and, of course, a happily ever after. Some of the names in this book have been changed to protect the innocent, as well as some of the not-so-innocent. When you've journeyed into a dark world where publicity and fame are commodities so deeply desired and unable to be bought, you're hesitant to give some of those people who have hurt you the attention they so desperately crave. But I am here to set the record straight, the good, the bad, and the ugly, the naked truth. I was born a girl with an insatiable appetite for the extraordinary, the strange, the unusual, the glamorous, and the morbid, and I experienced all of it. So follow me down the rabbit hole. The truth may be stranger than you imagine. Prologue. I know who I was when I got up this morning, but I think I must have been changed several times since then. Lewis Carroll, Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. 1988. It wasn't the most lavish-looking present under the tree. The flat, square package was wrapped in simple green and white paper with a glossy red drugstore-bought bow and addressed to me from my aunt. When I was 9, Christmas wasn't necessarily the spectacular event it had been in years past. I wasn't particularly interested in toys anymore, but I wasn't yet mature enough to appreciate the more practical presents. Holding the soft object in my hand, I didn't expect much. Carefully, I peeled away a corner of the paper to reveal what appeared to be the bright blue cover of a book. With a bit more eagerness, I tore away the remaining wrap and read aloud the words, Marilyn Monroe Paper Dolls. Of course I had heard of Marilyn Monroe before. Madonna had spent most of the 80s replicating the movie star, and most memorably in her 1985 Material Girl music video. And like most fourth-grade girls, I idolized the pop singer. But I don't recall ever seeing Marilyn before this. Smiling up at me from the cover of this gorgeous book were two illustrations of the starlet, one dressed in a black sequenced showgirl costume and top hat from her 1953 movie Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, and one in a casual pink sweater and capris with flowing blonde curls from the 1952's Clash by Night. Flipping through the thick, glossy pages, I saw a variety of costumes from her most famous roles: a pageant swimsuit with sash and tiara from We're Not Married in 1952, a cream gown with pink and purple frilly kimono wrap from The Prince and the Showgirl from 1957, a green and yellow Bo Peep inspired ensemble from one of her earliest roles, and so many more. More than 30 different costumes, including one of the starlet in nothing but a bathrobe draped over her otherwise naked body, filled the pages to dress the bikini-clad Marilyn Monroe cutout figure. On the back of the book was a biography detailing how the orphan Norma Jean became one of the world's greatest movie stars. With extra special care, I methodically cut out the figure in each of her glittering outfits. I spent hours dressing and redressing my Marilyn doll, imagining how she must have felt in each moment. The weight of those gilded gowns, the sounds of an active movie set, the wondrous eyes of the countless admirers, and the decadent Hollywood parties I could only dream about. My little world felt so limiting. As my family bounced from Oregon to Alaska, then eventually back to Oregon again, no place ever felt like home. I grew up hunting, fishing, reading, and playing in the woods in Alaska. When I arrived in Oregon, I was a fish out of water. The kids in my new school loved two things and two things only: sports, which I had never played, and video games, which I couldn't afford. Not to mention, my social skills were lacking. I frequently tried to reinvent my image, my group of friends, and my hobbies, but nothing ever felt like me. The other kids treated me like an outsider because they thought I was different. They were right. I was different. I dreamt of a world outside my little rain-soaked suburban bubble. I'd fantasize about a glamorous career and all the amazing costumes I would wear one day. I thought that if I wished hard enough, perhaps I would fall down the rabbit hole and find myself in a decadent world beyond my wildest dreams. And Norma Jean Morrison did that, didn't she? She escaped her boring existence and became Marilyn Monroe. Quickly, my fascination with the star escalated. Every Sunday morning, I would grab the newspaper and pull out the TV guide. My eyes would scan over the programming list, searching for the titles of any of her movies listed in the book. The first one I finally came across was Bus Stop from 1956. I set up our family VHS player to record it when my parents weren't looking. They let me keep the paper dolls, but they didn't really care for Madonna or Marilyn or such frivolous fascinations. I found that first film a little dull. Some of the nuances in Bus Stop went right over my 9-year-old head. After all, they couldn't always spell everything out in the 1950s. As weeks became months, my VHS collection grew, and I became acquainted with most of Monroe's better-known pictures. How to Marry a Millionaire quickly became my favorite, mainly for the campy 1950s fashions on screen. Yes, I know what you're thinking. I'm almost embarrassed to admit that because of the film's title, but the title and plot had nothing to do with why I liked it. I loved the three main characters. They were just too irresistible. Model roommates played by Lauren Bacall, the smart one, Marilyn, the romantic one, and Betty Grable, the athletic one who always said what was on her mind. As for Marilyn herself, I was absolutely enchanted with the glamorous creature whose beauty transcended the small television set in my family's living room. On screen, she appeared to have everything she ever dreamed of: fame, beauty, fortune, and of course, love. Someday I'll know what it's like, I thought. Someday I'll know what it's like to have it all. 2002. If I just put my head under the water and take a deep breath in, it would all be over, I thought. The bathroom was empty as I swam alone in the giant marble tub. The air was chilly inside the mansion walls, with a draft that always seemed to rustle through the rooms. I pulled my shoulders under the warm water and rested my stoned eyes on the wall opposite me. But could I really do it? I dipped my toes in and out of the water and listened for the the quiet echo the splash made as it bounced off the tile walls, feeling like an exotic fish trapped in some enormous aquarium. Outside the bathroom, the mansion was eerily quiet. It was unusually calm at this hour of the night. We spent yet another evening out at one of Hollywood's hottest nightclubs. Like clockwork, we went clubbing every Wednesday and Friday, before coming home and retiring to Hef's room, where we all smoked weed and went through the weird bi-weekly bedroom routine, which was nothing like most people imagined it to be. To an outsider, our evenings always looked incredibly glamorous. 7 beautiful women dancing the night away behind velvet ropes and bulging security guards, private table service to cater to our every desire, and exclusive access to the club, all at the expense of the world's most notorious boyfriend, Hugh Hefner. But if you looked close enough, each girl appeared to be just a little bit vacant and merely going through the motions of what life ought to be. Life inside the mansion wasn't at all what I expected to be. Not even close. Everyone thinks that the infamous metal gate was meant to keep people out, but I grew to feel it was meant to lock me in. I wasn't quite sure how I ended up in this curious, often dark world, but I was petrified by my own fear of what it would mean to ever leave. Tucked away inside Hugh Hefner's rolling Los Angeles estate, I was controlled by a spur-of-the-moment decision I made at 22 years old that I had grown to deeply regret despite the extravagant world it afforded me. It was a decision that changed the course of my life. I had to believe that there was a greater purpose for the choices I had made, whether it was to help advance my career or whether it was truly for love. And depending on the month, the week, and sometimes even the hour of the day, I would waffle back and forth between precisely why I was living a life as nothing more than girlfriend number 1 to a man who was old enough to be my grandfather. I didn't want to admit that I had sold a bit of my soul for the chance at fame. Would anyone even miss me? It's amazing the dark places your mind can wander when you're depressed. The depths of my own depression had led me down this very dark path, and there was no gleaming light, however distant, at the end of this tunnel. Maybe it was the pot and the alcohol, but drowning myself seemed like a logical way to escape the ridiculous life I was leading. I just couldn't take my misery anymore. Of course my family would be devastated, but I rarely saw them enough for my absence to make a difference. From a distance, it appeared as though the girlfriend's days consisted of bopping around Beverly Hills shops, driving flashy cars, and toting designer handbags. I played the part of the perfect girlfriend well. A bubbly, fun-loving, carefree girl who loved her dogs, her lifestyle, and most important, her boyfriend. Playing that role quickly became second nature, and the blurred lines of reality made it so that some days I struggled to even remember what I was like before moving into the mansion. It was like a high-stakes version of teenage politics. Sometimes you try so hard to fit in that you almost forget it's all an act. I was afforded many things while I lived in the Playboy mansion, but never the opportunity for the sort of self-discovery most 20-somethings enjoy. Public criticism and speculation have always trailed Hef and his harem of young blonde girlfriends. Do they all sleep with him? The more conservative folks would wonder. It's all an act. They're just paid to be arm candy. The younger crowd would usually surmise. How does he keep up with all of them? The older men marveled. But life inside the Playboy mansion wasn't exactly the sexy fairy tale my ex-boyfriend would have you believe. In fact, it was like a bedazzled, twisted prison where the inmates developed their own hazing and hierarchy, and where the release back into society was the equivalent of being excommunicated. How would the other girlfriends react to my passing? Among the 7 girlfriends, I had only one friend, Bridget Marquardt. I don't know, Marquardt? I feel like I always butcher Bridget's last name. Surely she would be distraught over my passing, but I couldn't imagine the other girls would shed even a single tear. The climate inside the mansion was toxic. I didn't participate in the Coca-Cola benders, The side boyfriends are all their harebrained money-making schemes that were all in direct violation of Hef's house rules. I rarely left the mansion, so making it home in time for curfew was never an issue either. Needless to say, my goody two-shoes reputation wasn't the most welcome among this group of girls. In fact, they'd probably view my unexpected demise as an opportunity to get away with more shit, as Hef busied himself with the public relations rollout regarding a passing at the mansion. Not to mention, it would mean less competition. Yep, they would be glad I was gone. Would Hef even feel bad when he heard the news? He'd probably be completely shocked. In his eyes, as long as each girlfriend had a substantial allowance to buy nice things and the ability to bask in the reflection of his fame, that's all she needed to be happy. He would surely never concede that my misery had anything to do with him or the life he provided. Would he even miss me? No. I was certain I was just another warm body, as we all were just another blonde. I could hear him say. Internally, I decided he would label it as a devastating accident. His main concern would be navigating Playboy out of any sort of PR crisis. A small memorial might even be held at the mansion, but it would glorify my days at Playboy and with Hef, once again promoting the idea that life inside those walls was nothing short of paradise. And just like that, I would be swept under the rug with every other scandal and ghost that once plagued Hugh Hefner, and my memory would involuntarily serve as yet another public reminder of the beauty that is Playboy. I think that knowing my passing would be in vain convinced me not to go through with it. In truth, I didn't really want to pass away, but I saw no other way out. Thankfully, the only thing greater than my need to escape was my desire to share my experience. If I sunk my head below the water and went to sleep, no one would ever know the truth. Eventually, I'll tell my story, I thought. I wasn't sure when, and I wasn't sure how, but someday I would fight my way out. Someday, I would be whole again. Chapter 1. Begin at the beginning, the king said very gravely, and go on till you come to the end. Lewis Carroll's Alice's Adventures in Wonderland. Slowly, the iron gates surrounding the infamous compound creaked open, and our shuttle began its ascent up the steep driveway. My nose was pressed so tightly against the window, anxious to spot any sign of the luxurious Holmby Hills. Ugh. I always get tongue-tied with that. Estate expertly hidden by the lush foliage that my makeup smudged on the glass. Over my shoulder, I heard a fellow partygoer point out the first glimpse of the 20,000 square foot Gothic Tudor, and that was steadily coming into view. There it is! A man in silk pajamas shouted. I craned my neck to spot the roof and fixed my eyes on the horizon as the mansion began to surface. Like an early morning sunrise, it was magic. The estate, situated on 5 rolling acres in one of LA's most prestigious neighborhoods, looked like a castle from a fairy tale. My large eyes widened, trying to fully absorb this moment. As the shuttle reached the top of the driveway, my girlfriend Heather spotted the infamous Playmates at Play sign and nudged me in the ribs. Look, she said, her smile so large, I thought it was about to snap off her cheeks. We both burst into laughter. We were positively giddy. We are actually here, I thought. I made it to the mansion. It had become a goal of mine to see the inside of these walls, and I told myself that I could now happily check that one off the bucket list. I even wondered if I would meet Gatsby himself, Mr. Hugh Hefner. My story wasn't atypical. A small-town girl, farmer's daughter, so to speak, who dreamt of becoming someone extraordinary. There were less than 10,000 residents in my hometown, and my high school graduating class was smaller than the guest list to most Hollywood parties. Since then, it has seen a boost in tourism thanks to part of the Twilight movies. But let me assure you, there was no Edward Cullen sauntering through my lunchroom. I don't know why I wanted to say high school, but I wanted to say high school lunchroom. After graduation, I moved 30 miles away to attend Portland State University, which didn't feel far enough, but it was the best I could do. It was early 1999, and I was in my second year in college when I heard on the news that Playboy's Millennium Playmate search was coming to Portland. Immediately, my mind started to wander. I found Oregon's weather depressing and didn't feel like the opportunity exactly lurked around every corner there. I had been thinking a lot about moving to Los Angeles to try my luck, but I didn't know anyone in LA or have the financial means to make such a big move. Apparently, according to the report, the magazine had been conducting a nationwide on-the-road search for the Millennium Playmate. A gigantic tour bus traveled the United States and Canada, stopping in 45 cities testing candidates. The girl chosen would receive $200,000, would appear inside the January 2000 issue of Playboy, and would be flown around the world to represent the men's magazine for the entire year. It sounded like just the opportunity I was looking for. Shit, girl, if I was your age around that time, I probably would have been jumping for the opportunity as well. Because at one point in my life, I wanted to also be a Playboy playmate and thought that it was all the things that she once thought it was as well. And I am glad that I never tried to achieve that dream, especially because I probably would not have gotten far. This wasn't the first time Playboy popped up on my radar. As was true with many children of the 80s, it wasn't abnormal for us to have a Playboy magazine arrive at the house. I even remember my mom and dad studying the front cover of a Playboy once to find the hidden rabbit head. As a kid, you think that sounds like a pretty fun game, but we were quickly told that it was for adults only. One day, my sister and I were scouring the house for any Christmas presents my mom may have hidden when we came across a few Playboys that had been hidden away. We flipped through in absolute hysterics, pointing out all the bare butts. I was a kid, so I thought it was hilarious. While Playboy wasn't completely foreign to my home, it still felt rebellious. I knew that if I auditioned for the Millennium Playmate that happened to be chosen, my parents wouldn't be thrilled at the prospect of me posing naked, but possibly would have respected my decision. It was a reputable magazine with a storied history, so it felt edgy, but also somewhat safe. Plus, at the time, many of Hollywood's biggest stars were appearing in the magazine. Cindy Crawford, Jenny McCarthy, Drew Barrymore, etc., not to mention my icon Marilyn Monroe, was Playboy's first ever cover girl. Naturally, I had pipe dreams about one day being in the magazine. This is perfect, I thought. I'm going to audition. According to the news report, the process was quite simple. Call the number provided, make an appointment, and show up with your favorite bikini. That's when my genius idea to fast track my stardom hit its first speed bump. I didn't actually own a bikini. In my defense, I lived in Oregon. Why would I need a bikini? And when I say things were tight financially, I mean they were tight. But I decided it was about time to make an investment in my future. After calling the number, getting the address where the bus would be stationed, and securing an audition time the following week, I went shopping. Needless to say, Portland wasn't brimming with retail shops specializing in swimwear. But I remember seeing one downtown near my college campus. So I popped in to see what I could find. I didn't really know where to begin. Obviously, I had never taken photos in a bikini before. This was about 15 years before selfies became popular, so I didn't know what I should be looking for. After scouring the racks for the best deal, I decided on a silver metallic bikini that was both sexy, but also one that I felt reasonably comfortable in. The fact that she was going to the Millennium Playmate search and she had the metallic bikini was just on theme for that time. Perfect execution, in my opinion. Before the audition, I figured I should probably get some kind of tan. There weren't too many sunny days in the Pacific Northwest, so my complexion was incredibly light, particularly when coupled with blonde hair and a silver swimsuit. I went to the nearby tanning salon and had my first experience with a tanning bed. I was terrified of going to my audition bright red, so I asked for the lowest possible voltage. It wasn't a drastic difference, but it did the job. As I pulled into the address I had been given, I spotted the tour bus immediately. It was so large that it stood out like a sore thumb in the hotel parking lot it was stationed in. When I arrived, I was ushered inside the hotel lobby with the other potential playmates to fill out some paperwork before stepping onto the bus for the audition. Over my new metallic bikini, I wore a barely above the knee black mini skirt and a white button-down blouse in hopes of capturing that girl next door image photographers were apparently looking for. And to be honest, it was also the sexiest outfit I owned. To tell the truth, I was a bundle of nerves. I had never modeled before, so the idea that I'd be posing practically nude was terrifying. But I figured that since editors were hoping to discover new talent, they were expecting girls to be relatively inexperienced. On the bus, I envisioned a few stylists helping candidates with hair and makeup touch-ups, and a distinguished photographer guiding the amateur models into the most flattering poses. Don't get me wrong, I knew it wasn't a full-blown shoot, but I expected at least a little help. It was Playboy after all. After a few minutes of waiting, I was escorted to the gigantic 45-foot-long tour bus with two other girls. We were made to wait in the ultra-luxe living room area, which was wrapped in leather with a 7-foot movie screen in the back. I remember thinking that it was nicer than any home I'd ever been in. Framed portraits of Playboy's most iconic covers hung on the walls that reached up to a mirrored glass ceiling. A man with a clipboard walked into the room and greeted us. He gave us a brief history of the magazine and then asked that we go around the room and introduce ourselves and say why we were there. One girl looked like a Pamela Anderson-inspired stripper with white, poofy hair, a clingy silvery dress, and clear plastic platform heels, and appeared to have brought her PIMP with her. For a moment, I remember wondering if she was actually a female impersonator. There weren't too many women like her running around Portland at the time, and I was so distracted by her appearance that, for the life of me, I can't recall a single thing she said. The other girl was pretty, but not too remarkable, and I'd guess about 10 years older than me. I came to try out because I've always wanted to be a playmate, she gushed. The man with the clipboard smiled and nodded, pretending not to have heard this response more than 20,000 times already. And me and my best friend have a bet on who would become one first. I want to be Miss April. Then it was my turn. Did I say term? If I did, I misspoke. It was my turn. I've always dreamed of moving to Los Angeles and becoming an actress, I explained, the other two candidates glaring at me. I love Marilyn Monroe, and she was the first playmate, so that's why I want to be in Playboy. For some reason, each of us believed we were total shoo-ins. I mean, I really thought I had a shot. Knowing what I know now, though, none of us ever stood a chance. After the meet and greet, each girl was called one by one into the onboard photo studio. When my name was called, I stood up and pressed the creases out of my skirt before making my way into the room. It all felt very rushed. Besides the photographer, the room was empty, no stylist or coaches to speak of. "Hi, Holly, how are you?" the photographer said, staring down at my application in his hand and guiding me toward a white backdrop. "This will be great. Just relax. Have fun." I was instructed to strip down to my bikini for the first photograph. Brimming with nerves, I did what I was told. Awesome, great, the photographer said hurriedly. Now, can you take your top off? Oh shit. He wants me to do what? I thought. He's not going to take pictures of my boobs, is he? It was incredibly naive. I know that now. I had figured that the first round of photos were just to see if you were cute enough to be called back, and then perhaps we discussed the possibility of more revealing photos. I wasn't expecting to get naked at that very moment. Grudgingly, I shed my top for a photo. Given how incredibly awkward I felt, I can't imagine it was the most flattering photograph. Immediately, I felt the urge to do some kind of damage control. I had signed my life away on the photo release, so could they use these photos even if I wasn't selected? I said, clearing my throat. Could you make a note or something that you don't have my permission to use these pictures unless I'm selected? The photographer gave me a weird look, clearly not expecting that kind of reaction from a girl auditioning for Playboy. Okay, I'll make that note, he said before scribbling something down on my application. That was it. 10 minutes and I was done. Now looking back, I don't think I could have done anything more damaging to my chances. Hi, I'm Holly. I want to be in Playboy, but don't use my topless photo. But at the time, I wasn't prepared for it. Of course, I had hopes of becoming the Millennium Playmate, but I sure as hell didn't want a topless photo of myself snapped in the back of a bus to be printed in the magazine. Worrying about it appearing online wasn't even a consideration back then. What if they did a spread of all the girls that auditioned? Not too surprisingly, I never heard a word from them. When the Millennial Playboy issue eventually came out, a set of Peruvian twins graced the centerfold. The girls were models from Miami who never even stepped foot on the Playboy bus. The tour was mostly a publicity stunt for the January issue. Ow, twins, I thought. I never stood a chance. And the previous issue was a 4-page spread called Girls of the Millennium Search, showcasing collages of nude photos from the girls who auditioned on the bus. It was exactly the type of story I wanted to avoid. Frantically, I scanned the pages but didn't see my photo anywhere. Thank God I had said something. Although, after signing the paperwork, I'm pretty sure the editors could have done whatever they wanted with my photo. Yet, while I didn't want to end up in some throwaway section of the magazine, I had to admit, I felt a bit defeated. I thought I'd blown my opportunity to appear in Playboy. It wound up being 6 years and a very strange twist of fate before my next chance at a pictorial. In the meantime, I decided to transfer schools so I could make my way to Los Angeles. Before I left, however, there was one thing I needed to do. I took a deep breath as I plunked 3 brand new credit cards down on the receptionist's desk. Like every college student, I had received a slew of credit card offers in the mail and applied for as many as I could get. Since the limits were so low, it took 3 cards to cover the $7,000, plus my new set of breast implants would cost me. As each card swiped through the machine, maxing out one after the other, I carefully filled out the paperwork with nervous excitement. You might think my failed Playboy casting was the reason I was now sitting in the doctor's office preparing for an expensive cosmetic procedure, but that was really just the straw that broke the camel's back. For the past several years, I had struggled with insecurities about my chest, or lack thereof. I'd always been naturally curvy from the waist down, but from the waist up, I was as skinny as a stick figure. This had plagued me through high school, and I spent those years perpetually armed with a heavily stuffed Wonder Bra. I wasn't trying to appear stacked per se. I was just trying to balance the proportions of my body while I waited for the bombshell chest I was certain I would one day develop. I remember gaping at Anna Nicole Smith's Guess ads when I was in junior high, hopeful that I would be just as voluptuous one day. But it never happened. I even sent away for herbal supplements guaranteed to increase your chest size by 2 cups. I remember those, and I remember the commercials, and I remember being like 14, 15, thinking that I needed them as well. Surprise! They didn't work. I actually called and got my money back. The nurse led me into the pre-op room and instructed me to change into the scratchy hospital gown. I had never had even the most minor surgery before, but I was young, fearless, and determined to look my best. After all, you only live once, right? I was sure I would pay the credit cards off in a timely manner. It was no big deal. After the procedure, I woke up feeling like I had been run over by a garbage truck. The doctor had made the surgery sound so simple during my consultation that I actually thought I would be up on my feet that same day. Foolishly, I planned on keeping the entire ordeal a secret from my parents. I wasn't in the habit of discussing my private anatomy with my mom and dad since I'd been stuffing my bras religiously for years. I figured they wouldn't even notice. There was no way they would have allowed me to pile on all this massive credit card debt in one swoop. But I didn't want to hear anyone's advice. I was always one of those stubborn kids who insisted on learning things the hard way. Same, girl. Same. The nurse rolled me out of the facility in a wheelchair to meet my friend who was scheduled to pick me up. Slumped over in the passenger seat, I realized there was no way I could keep this from my parents. After she pulled into the driveway and walked me to the front door, I not so gracefully stumbled through the entryway and flopped on my parents' couch, clutching a barf bag full of bile in my chest. In this state, I had to explain the whole ordeal to them as they shook their heads with a mixture of amusement and amazement. Luckily for me, I had long been rebellious, and they were used to my crazy antics. After a few days of recovery, where I felt like an elephant was sitting on my chest, I finally made it to the mall to buy my first post-surgery bra. As I tried on a handful, I finally found a perfect fit. I looked at the tag on the lacy white Victoria's Secret Dream Angels bra. A 34D. The surgeon had told me he couldn't guarantee what size my breast would end up being. I had asked for a C cup using a topless photo of a playmate as inspiration. I couldn't believe I was a D cup. I was huge. While I don't regret the surgery, I couldn't have been happier with my body. The credit card debt would end up becoming too much for me to pay off in a timely manner, contributing to money troubles that would end up haunting me in the years to come. Shortly after the surgery, with roughly $100 in my bank account, I picked up my battered red Toyota Celica and made my way, like countless girls before me, down the Pacific coast for a chance at making it. After 2 years at Portland State University, I transferred my credits to Loyola Marymount, a private university about 5 miles south of Santa Monica. I was earning a double major in psychology and theater arts and figured there was no better place to study acting than in LA. Student housing was already at capacity when I arrived, so transfer students were put up at a hotel across from campus, 2 students to a room, until we could make other arrangements. I thought it was so cool getting to live in a hotel, and I didn't want to have to move out after my first semester. Let's try that again. And I didn't want to have to move out after my first semester. Not to mention, apartments in Los Angeles were really pricey, and I was anxious about having to eventually factor that into my already tight budget. Girl, good thing you weren't at that Hotel Cecil. Whew. As I was reading that part where they put them in a hotel, that's all I could think was of the Hotel Cecil. So that's probably also why I was stumbling on my words there. I was distracted with my own thoughts. I hadn't been in Southern California more than 24 hours before I realized I needed a relatively well-paying job, and quickly. At a friend's suggestion, I headed to Hooters in Santa Monica to apply for a waitressing gig. Much to my surprise, I was hired on the spot. There are so many stipulations to being a Hooters girl, like to the ones that do it and can maintain it and make that money, like, I am rooting for you, girl. Get that bag. But I know that you have to put a lot of investment in yourself to secure that bag. Thank God for my new boobs, I thought. My first day on the job, the manager handed me the signature Hooters girl outfit and motioned for me to go change. When I emerged from the stall in the women's restroom, I paused to take a long look at myself in the mirror. How can I go out on the floor in this outfit, I thought. I had never felt so naked in an outfit before. The breeze of the air conditioning went right through the thin tank top and tiny spandex shorts as if I wore nothing at all. And the shorts were so tiny, the girls' butt cheeks always hung out of the bottoms. I often thought the restaurant should have been called Cheekers. The only blessing was the nylons. Hooters girls were required to wear tan pantyhose to make their legs look flawless. But to me, they also added a measure of decency. Suck it up, Holly, I thought. My dream was always to make something of myself, and by allowing me to afford to stay in LA, this job was a means to that end. I had read an article about Hooters girls in Jane magazine that highlighted how much cash they earned in tips. There was no way I was giving up this opportunity. I fixed my hair, put a smile on my face, and walked out the door. And you know what? It really wasn't that bad. I soon learned to love my job. After a short time in the city, I settled into a tiny Westwood apartment with my friend Nora. Besides a mattress, a lamp, and a pile of school books, my room was all but empty. My Hooters salary was barely covering my daily expenses, so I relied heavily on scholarships in order to pay for a portion of the hefty tuition at the private university. What was left over for me to pay? Well, let's just say it went unpaid for quite some time. I was 20 years old and almost delusionally confident and optimistic. I was convinced I could do anything I put my mind to, even become a famous actress and get my college degree within a few years. I knew I wasn't always the hottest girl in the room, but I also knew I wanted success so badly that I would work harder than anyone else for it. For a while, I did manage to juggle it all, the school, the job, and the auditions. There was only so much longer I could keep it up. Though. I was burning the candle at both ends, and something was bound to give.